Hi, I'm James Orvis, and I'm going to show you 7 big reasons why you should be using Ableton's Echo to go from this to this. So let's get stuck in with those 7 aspects of Ableton Echo that you should be paying attention to. So the first one that we've got is input drive, and I'm going to use input drive on 3 of the tracks in this Ableton project: the kick, the drums, and also the bass. So this is those 3 working together. What I'm going to do is go into the bass, and we're going to basically make that bass sound much better by adding some grit and saturation. So you're probably thinking like, well, why are you using Ableton Echo? Because it's got the input drive on there. So it gives it like this really nice distinct character. So let's have a look at this. So when you first bring open Ableton Echo, this D button here won't be on. So this is clip dry. And when you switch this on, it means that it adds distortion to the dry signal going into Ableton Echo. So without it, you can hear we're driving. Just bring that up a little bit. We're driving the delay signal. And if we go to dry, we're not driving this dry signal. But what I can do is put on the D button there for dry, and it adds saturation to the dry signal. And I already found the sweet spot earlier, so about 25 dB of input gain. But listen to the difference. So before it sounds quite flabby, and it just sounds great with that saturation on. So what I'm going to do now is use the technique again, but for the kick and the drums. But this time, instead of just applying saturation to the dry signal, we're actually going to keep the dry signal and add a parallel chain. So let's take a look at the kick first. So this is the kick. And you can see I've already set up the processing chain here. So I've called it Echo Dry Parallel. And you can see if we solo this channel and turn it up, we've distorted that kick, the full dry signal, we've distorted it using the input with the D button switched on. And then if we go to the dry one, you can see we're still keeping that dry signal intact. But what we can do is we can bring up the volume of this one. And it just maintains the characteristics of the signal before we distorted it, but we're just adding some of that saturation in there as well. So that's a trick that I like to do quite often with a multitude of effects. It's not just for this. I use it all the time, parallel processing. And then I've also done it on the drums as well. So this one's quite subtle. I'm not going to go through it again, but what I might do is just bring up that volume so you can hear it more. So let's turn it off first, and then I'll bring it up. So you can see it just adds more kind of slushiness to the drums. Too much will kind of smush the drums too much, and you'll get rid of the dynamics, but a little bit in there just gives it a bit more grit and a bit more drive and excitement. So I've got the input up all the way, so it's 40 dB. If I wanted to push this further, I could put a utility beforehand. So let's just go ahead and do that as an example and solo it. I could push this even further. Now it's like really distorted. Let's just bring that back down and just put it back to where it was. So I'm just gonna get rid of that utility again. So you can hear there, this one, it just adds a bit of subtle saturation. Well, I mean, it's quite extreme, but what we're doing is the parallel processing, so it works nicely there. So that's it for that one, and let's take a look at the next tip. So this next reason is an obvious one. It's the analog tape delay characteristics of Ableton's Echo. And it's probably the biggest reason why I opt for Ableton's Echo over, say, Ableton's delay plugin. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is it's got this analog characteristic about it where it's quite warm sounding. When you move the delay times, you get this nice pitch effect. And it's a big reason why I bought the Source Audio collider pedal as well, because it had tape delay on there, which was quite nice. It reminded me of Ableton's Echo. So I'll show you this in action and what I mean by this. The reason why I like it is it's great for build-ups. I do this in my live set with the pedal that I've got, and I do it in my Ableton projects by using Echo, and also a Valhalla delay as well, which is another one I highly recommend. So let's take a look at the drums, and I'm just going to solo them for now. And the way that I tend to use the Echo is I always kind of use it for drums, so drum build-ups. I'll show you how I do this. So the way that I do it is I make a parallel chain, so you can see here I've got a dry, and then I've also got a delay chain. So we've got dry, and the delay one, you won't hear anything coming out of it yet because I've created my own little send return effect by just adding a utility in there. As I bring this up, it sends the dry signal into the Echo. And you'll notice that when I bring it back down, it cuts the dry signal, so then we get these nice delay tails. That's also something that I would automate for a build-up in a project. So let's just bring that back up. And then what I tend to do for the build-up is I'll increase the feedback. So this will start quite low, and it'll start to build up. Let's bring in the dry drums as well. So I'll bring that up. And then I'll start to mess with the times. Let's take the kick off and bring the other instruments in. Maybe a little bit less on the gain there. So yeah, that's how I would use it. And then you can obviously add little splashes of this as well. So yeah, great. That's something that I do in my live sets, and it's the analog characteristics that really work for me, and that's why I use it over and over again. So let's take a look at the next tip now. So this next tip is just building on the last one, and it's the inbuilt reverb. So this is one of the big reasons why I also bought the collider pedal, is because it has a delay. So I've got the tape delay effect, and then I've also got the reverb on the right hand side as well. And that's also why I tend to use Ableton's Echo in my projects, because it mimics that that pedal that I use in my live sets. So let's take a look at the reverb. So you can see we've got the wet that we can bring in there, and then we've also got a decay as well. I usually leave this on post. So what I'm going to do is just to show you this in action. Let's solo the drums, and again I'm going to bring up the send on the utility. So we've got that delay going there. Let's just set it around 60 milliseconds. And then what I'm going to do is start to bring up this reverb with a small bit of decay on it. So this just adds more tension. And then you can bring up that decay as well. So a little bonus tip for you. So what I tend to do quite often is put in a EQ after that. So let's just go to EQ 8 and just add a little bit of filter in there. So you can use auto filter as well, or another plugin. I'm just going to bring it up to around 225, around there. Just bring this back up. So them high decay times, you know, it's quite a lot of bass in there. So we just want to get rid of that a little bit. And then another little bonus tip that I'm going to throw in there is to sidechain. So let's go ahead and bring in Dynamics Compressor. Open up this little tab, press sidechain, go to the kick, and let's just test this out. So I'm just going to look in this view. So we've got this bouncing going on now. And what I can do is build this up. And when I drop that kick in and bring the gain knob down, you'll hear it ducking. So it's great for a drop because you can keep that tail going and still keep it in check. So I've got to try and use my mouse for this because normally I'll use a MIDI controller or automation. Let's go ahead and bring it in a second. kind of worked. I didn't quite get to that gain knob as quickly as I wanted to. But again, when you're working on a project and you're using automation or a MIDI controller, you can be a little bit quicker with that. But you get the idea. So yeah, when it drops and the kick comes back in, we lose the send, and then we've got this ducking going on because the kick comes in and ducks the wet signal. So it just keeps under control and it's not as washy as before. So that's it for that one. Let's take a look at the next tip now. So the next parameter that I use a lot on Ableton Echo is the ducking parameter. So if you go to the character page, you can see we've got this section here called ducking. And what it is basically is sidechain. So remember in the last example, I showed you how we were able to duck the wet signal on the drums using a compressor with sidechain enabled. If I go back to the vocals again, you can see the ducking here. All that is just the same thing. So you click this on and it ducks the signal when the dry signal comes in. So for this example, I'm going to use the vocal. So this vocal here, and let's listen to it dry first. So that's the dry vocal. And then if I put this on, got this kind of like nice ringing feedback. So you can see that I've got 164 on the delay, quite high feedback. So my goal here is to try and separate the wet from the dry, because it's not too much, but it's quite mushy sounding because they're kind of stuck together. So if I put ducking on, and just bring that threshold up so you can't hear it at first. Listen to what happens when I start to bring this down. Especially when I go all the way down to -60 there. You can hear there's a little bit of a delay before it comes back up again, and that's to do with the release. So if I bring the release all the way down to 20, and then bring it up, you get like a longer release, especially if I bring that feedback up as well. So let's bring it back down again. I'm going to leave that at 20 milliseconds because I want it to kind of come up straight away, almost. And let's just listen to that with the kick and the bass. And add a bit more feedback. And one more time. Especially when we get them kind of double hits as well, it's nice to kind of keep it out of the way, keep that wet signal out of the way. So yeah, that's something I use quite a lot, not just on vocals but on other instruments as well, like drums and stuff like that as well. I normally do it on the drums actually, but I didn't do it for this example because I wanted to save it for the vocals. So if you're enjoying the sounds in this tutorial, you can get access to all of those samples by joining my Patreon, which is in the video description below. So monthly supporters get access to all project files from past and future tutorials, not just in Ableton, but also on the hardware as well. And you also get access to an ever-growing Discord community and also a monthly Q&A where I'll be answering your questions directly and also giving feedback on projects you're working on, which will be very useful for you all to listen to what each of you are doing, and also I can give my advice to help you better your production skills. So enough of that, let's get back to the tips. So we're going to focus on the vocals again for this one, and it's the parameter that's directly under ducking, which is wobble. So what wobble does is it increases the analog tape aspect of the echo. So with analog tape delays, you get this kind of nice subtle wobbling effect where it changes the speed quite slowly and quite subtly changes the pitch a little bit. If we put wobble on, we have the option to be able to increase that amount quite a lot. So what I'm going to do actually is bring this down and show you what this sounds like if we just solo the wet signal. So I'm going to bring this up in volume and then start to increase the amount. So you can hear it tailing off there, it kind of like moves and modulates. And it's lovely because every time you're going to get this different variation, because it's randomized. So we can go quite high as well. And then we can also change the morph speed as well. So I'm going to leave it on 67. That was quite a sweet spot for it. And obviously it's something we can automate as well. We could automate that throughout an arrangement. Let's have a listen with the kick and the bass in. And then bring it up a little bit. Sounds great. That's a nice little effect. It kind of removes it quite a lot away from the original vocal sound. It sounds like two different sounds now. And it sounds different every time. So it just never gets boring over an arrangement because it's always changing. So there's that one, and now we're going to take a look at the next tip. So another thing that I love about Ableton's Echo is the ability to create very high feedback tones. So I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. So for this example, I've got this effects channel, and I'm using Ableton's analog, and I've just got this very simple preset, which is called muted keys. So it's just kind of like a piano preset. And then what I'm doing is using Ableton's Echo to create some high feedback tones. So you'll notice that I put the dry wet all the way up, so it's fully wet. We've got some reverb on there. We've got very low delay time settings, and I'll show you why in a second. And I've also switched these to time, so I'm able to modulate them. And we've got the feedback all the way up to 132% at the moment. And then I think another thing that I did as well was just changed the filtering as well. So you can see I brought the filtering down and then boosted it a little bit there. And what I'm going to do now is just show you what this sounds like with the settings that I've got. Maybe I'll show you it dry first, then I'll put them on. So there's dry and on. That's cool, right? Get these kind of like guitar amp style effects where it's like feedback in. And listen to what happens when I move this. So this is extremely useful for just those weird effects that you get in breakdowns. Let's bring it in with the drums as well, maybe the bass. Or all of them without the kick. Imagine that with the drum effects going off as well. And the Vox like increasing in feedback. That's something I would do across an arrangement. I would play around with the modulation of all of these channels. And that's something we'll discuss in later tutorials. I've got some more planned for you. When it comes to, you know, build-up effects, I'll show you how to automate all of these effects. So yeah, that's really cool. I love that. Very simple. You know, I'm just using Ableton's analog, just a really simple preset. And then I'm using these settings, really high feedback settings on the Echo to get that special sound. To me, it reminds me of when you push a guitar against a guitar cabinet and you like really push it in and get all those feedback tones coming from it. So for the last example, I just want to quickly talk about the Echo filter section and also the modulation section as well. So what I love about this is that we've got the ability to move the cutoff and the resonance of both a low pass and a high pass filter cutoff. So what this does to the sound is it just creates different tones, especially when we're using it on this sound from the previous example with high feedback. So let's have a listen to this. It's quite cool, you're able to change the tone there. And then also the ability to modulate that as well. So I'm just going to bring that depth amount up. So you can hear that moving around. So each time it comes in as well, the filter position is different. Let's just add a bit more resonance to that. And then we've also got the ability, this is a bit of a bonus one, I didn't put it on my list, but also able to modulate the delay time as well. So instead of moving it here, we can just modulate it automatically using an LFO. Now I won't go too much into all of the parameters, that's for another tutorial. Maybe we'll go do a deep dive, a full deep dive of Echo on all of the different parameters, so you know exactly how to use every little part of it. But for now, I'll just quickly go over the different options here. So you can see we've got shapes, change the LFO shape, more of a random shape there. And then we've also got phase, which changes the phase of the left and right LFOs. And then also speed as well. So if we could take sync off, we can go to really high frequencies. It sounds really cool, that. Great for build-ups. Great for intros and outros as well. And if you are performing live with Ableton, if you're using a DAW live, The echo is just great. Like, hook that up with a MIDI controller and just open up the feedback and mess around with the times and LFO settings. It's a great little plugin. So yeah, definitely one that I would recommend using on pretty much every production, as I do myself. Drop me a comment below and let me know which one was your favorite tip. And then next, I would recommend subscribing so you can keep up to date with the content that I'm going to be pushing out weekly. And then I would highly recommend watching this next video right here, which is jam-packed full of extra tips and tricks which are going to help you on your production journey.